Hi guys, hope you all doing well and welcome back to our series of Azure Active Directory. And in this video, we are going to talk about the setup and portal configuration required for password protection and banned password. Now, if you're watching this series from the beginning, in the last video, we have discussed about the theoretical part moreover related to Azure AD password protection, whereas the agenda of this video will be knowing how you should implement password protection, what are the different portal configuration that needs to be in place, how to implement password protection for your on-prem environment, what are the different setup and installation agents that you need to make it work, how exactly it works under the hood, what is the process that's been done either by DC or by the proxy agent. We'll also talk about the service details, which services are responsible for Azure AD password protection to work. And the last thing that I'm going to talk about is the event logs that you should refer to in order to troubleshoot if Azure AD password protection is not working as expected. So starting off by knowing portal configuration. When it comes to portal configuration, there are two modes which are available. The first one is audit mode and the other one is enforced mode. In audit mode, whenever a bad password reset or change request is initiated. Now, what do I mean by this? That let's say I have blocked a keyword named as workspace in the custom banned password list, and a user tries to reset the password by using workspace at 123. In this case, it is a bad password reset attempt which has been made. So if your Azure AD password protection configuration has audit mode, the user will be allowed to reset the password, but events will be generated. Whereas in enforced mode, apart from events getting generated, the user will be blocked by resetting that password. Now, these are the only two modes that you have to keep in mind in terms of portal configuration. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to my browser where I have signed in with global admin and I have opened Azure Active Directory. What you have to do now is you have to click on security, then you have to click on authentication methods, and then as you can see, I'm getting the option of password protection. Now, once you click on password protection, there are two more options that you get, which are moreover related to custom smart lockout, wherein you can define the lockout threshold and lockout duration in seconds. But what we have to focus is these four options which we get here. The first one is enforce custom list, wherein I'm going to define these two keywords, which is workspace and Conceptswork. And then I'm going to say that enable password protection for my Windows Server Active Directory. And the mode that I'm going to use is enforced mode. Now, what will be my end goal or the use case which I'm going to demonstrate will be that if an admin or a user they try to reset their password in on-prem environment, and admin can do this from Active Directory and a user can simply do this by changing their own password. Whenever they are trying to reset the password, they should not be able to use these two keywords. This is my end goal, which I will show you by the end of this video once all the configuration is done. So this is all about that you should know about the portal configuration. Now let's understand the deployment part of Azure AD Password Protection for your on-prem environment. For that, let's assume a scenario wherein a company named as Conceptswork is trying to implement Azure AD Password Protection for their on-prem environment. But in a nutshell, this service works with all the keywords that you have defined combined with the global banned password list. And you can customize this list as per your enterprise. What we also have to make sure that we are defining this custom banned password list in Azure Active Directory. But the same set of information has to be replicated to your on-prem environment. Now the question comes how exactly it's all done or how it works. So it works on behalf of two different agents. The first one is DC agent for password protection and the other one is password protection proxy agent. Now, it's the DC agent which actually validates the bad password reset request. That means matching whether the keyword which has been entered by user is matching with any keyword that you have already blocked or banned. Whereas the proxy agent has the purpose of downloading the new list or downloading the new policy and making it available to your DC. Now, the reason behind this is because you will be keep on updating your custom banned password list. That's the reason there are two different agents required in order for Azure AD password protection to work in a nutshell. Now, the name of these two agents, they have a meaning defined in the name itself. So what do I mean by this? That the DC agent for password protection will be installed on domain controllers, whereas the password protection proxy agent can be installed on any server that's been joined to your domain. But if we talk about Microsoft's recommendation, you should install DC agent on all your DCs, and you must have at least two password protection proxy agent. Now, the reason behind installing DC agent on all the domain controllers, because the DC agent can only validate the password reset request which has been received on the domain controller on which a DC agent is installed. So that's the reason why you should install DC agent on all your domain controllers. There is one more common process which both these agents does, and that is they both register a service connection point in your AD so that they can locate each other. Now, the reason behind this is moreover related to the architecture fundamental of how Azure AD password protection works. And let me explain you this in a real-time scenario. As I have said before, that it will be your Azure Active Directory where you will be defining your keywords, but we have to make sure that all these keywords are available for your on-prem environment as well. But it's not your domain controller which is directly going to talk to Azure Active Directory and getting all the custom banned password list. Whereas we'll place the proxy agent in between domain controllers and Azure Active Directory so that the proxy agent can query all the new policies that you have defined, and the same should be sent to your DC with the help of DC agent for password protection. But what we also have to make sure that all the configuration is in place. Now, what do I mean by this? That the first step which is required is installation of your DC agent. Now, if you do this with GUI, that means the interactive mode, your DC agent requires a restart. That means on whichever domain controller we will be installing the DC agent, we have to reboot it. The next process is of installing password protection agent. The next one is register the proxy agent so that it can contact Azure Active Directory, and then we will register the forest. Now, registering the proxy agent requires global admin credential, whereas registering the forest requires global admin credential as well as domain admin account. Now, in order to install DC agent, what you need that your server should be Windows Server 2012 R2 or above. .NET Framework 4.5 should be available. There should be network connectivity between DC and proxy agent servers. And all the DCs where you will be installing DC agent, they must be enabled with DFSR for sysvol replication. Now, the only difference between the requirements for DC agent and proxy agent is that your proxy agent should be able to contact these endpoints. Now, this can be an entry point of us knowing why we need two agents. So there are a couple of design principles on which Azure AD password protection works, and that is for most of the enterprise, DCs are not exposed to public internet. That means the first fundamental is that there is no requirement of internet on domain controllers, whereas there should be no new ports that should be opened for this particular deployment. And what we also have to make sure that Azure AD password protection should work with all the authentication methods, either password sync, pass-through, or federated authentication. So now let's understand how everything is going to work when you have all the configuration in place. That means you have done the portal configuration and you have installed the agents. Now let's see how it is going to work. So since we know that it's the DC agent which is responsible for validating the bad password attempt, but it's not your domain controller or your DC agent which is directly going to contact Azure Active Directory to get new list, what will happen that domain controller will try to locate the proxy servers with the help of SCP which has been registered. And then the domain controller will initiate a request of downloading the new password policy, which is as of now available, which contains all the custom banned password list. And what your proxy agent will do, it will contact Azure Active Directory and then get the same set of information replicated to your domain controller. Now, this is the entire process which happens once you have both the agents in place and once the configuration is done, including Azure Active Directory and your on-prem environment. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to my machine where I will be installing DC agent. So this is my DC where I'm going to install the DC agent, and in order to download the file you have to go to this particular link. This is the link which I will be sharing in the description section as well, which you can review and just download the DC agent. Now the moment I'll click on download, I'll get both the options, but since this is the DC, I'll select the first one. Now for this demo, I have already downloaded the file and all I have to do is I have to run the setup. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to initiate the setup. Let me tell you guys, there is no configuration that's required. All you have to do is you have to install this agent and then the respective service will be created and that will be initiated by default. Now, as I've said before, that the installation of DC agent with the help of GUI installation requires a restart. So what I'll do is I'll click on yes, and I'll switch to my machine where I will be installing Proxy agent. So this is my other machine wherein I have signed in with enterprise admin account, and here I will be installing Proxy agent. As I've said before, the link is same but the files are different. So for this machine I have downloaded the file which is responsible for Proxy agent. So now I'm going to double click on this and I'm going to initiate the installation. This also doesn't require any configuration that has to be in place. The setup will not ask for any configuration, but once the proxy agent is installed, there are three commands which you have to run in order to register your proxy connector as well as register your forest. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to run the command wherein I will be importing the module that's required to register the proxy agent. So now that I have successfully imported the module required for the registration, the next command that you have to run is Register-AzureADPasswordProtectionProxy, and the switch that you have to use is AccountUpn, and you have to enter your global admin UPN because this is a directory-wide change which requires admin privilege. Now I will be prompted for credentials, and once I'll enter my password, this proxy registration process will be completed. So as you can see, I'm getting the prompt to enter my password now, and I've entered my password and I'll click on sign in. Once this process will be completed, the third command that we have to run is Register-AzureADPasswordProtectionForest. Now, what you have to make sure that this PowerShell that you are running, that should be running with at least domain admin privilege, and you again use the same switch which we have used with the registration of proxy. Now, once both these commands are completed, that means your setup is complete, the configuration is complete. Now all you have to do is you have to restart the service on Proxy as well as on your DC just to check the logs whether the new policies are now being enforced or not. So what I'll do is I'll switch back to my 81st and I'll restart the service over there, and then I'll restart the service of Proxy, and then let's see what are the logs that we are getting. So my DC is restarted now, and I'm going to open services.msc, and then let's see what is the current state of Azure AD DC agent password protection service. So as you can see that it is showing as of now running, but what I'll do is I'll restart this. Now the events which are getting generated on DC as well as on your proxy, they have the same folder name. It's just they are located in a different place altogether. So I'll show you how you can check the logs on DC. So on DC, you have to go to this application and service log, and then you'll click on Microsoft. And as you can see, I'm getting this option of Azure AD Password Protection. And here it says DC agent. And as you can see, if I'll check the admin logs, you see now that this service is enforcing the following Azure AD policy. That means my DC agent was able to query the new policies that were created in the portal. But if I'll switch back to my machine of my proxy, let's see what all logs we are getting over there. So here you have to go to Event Viewer, and then again you have to click on Application and Service Logs. And here the folder name will be different. Instead of DC agent, it should be proxy agent. As you can see, it is showing me now proxy service. So if I'll open this admin log details, I'm not getting any information, but if I'll click on operational, as you can see that Azure AD password protection service was forwarded a message which has been successful while reaching domain controller. So this is how exactly the setup process works. Now the next thing that I have to show you is the use case. So for that, I'm going to switch to my machine where I have AD, and I'll open Active Directory users and computers, and from here I'll try to reset a password for a particular user where I will be using the blocked keywords which I have added. So it was workspace, and let's add at 123. I'm going to copy this, and let's now change the password of any of my user, and let's see if I'm able to reset this as a password or not. And as you can see, I'm getting this prompt. Now if I go back to my logs and if I'll refresh this, as you can see, the reset password request was rejected because it doesn't comply with the policies, and the user is the same one for which we were trying to reset the password. So here itself, you'll get all the details which are moreover relative to the logs which are getting generated. This experience was moreover related to admin, but let's talk about how this will behave for user. So for that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to provide this user a temp password so that next time when this user changes the password, he or she should be prompted to enter a new password. And then we'll use the same set of keywords and let's see if it works or not. So I'm going to create a temp password, and now I'm going to switch to my machine where I will be signing with this user account. So this is my other machine where I will be signing with that account and with the temp password that I have created. And then we'll try to reset the password with workspace at 123, workspace at 123. And now let's see if the password is processed or not. And as you can see, I'm getting the same prompt that you cannot reset this password. Now let's come back to our DC and see if we are getting another set of logs relative to this. And as you can see, the changed password request is also denied. So this is the entire process that you have to do to set up Azure AD Password Protection for your on-prem environment. Now let's talk about a quick summary for what all we have discussed. We have discussed about implementation of password protection. We have discussed about portal configuration, how to enable this feature for your on-prem environment, what are the setup and installation logs that you can refer to, what are the service details that you should refer to. In my next video, I'm going to talk about the new experience of app registration on Azure AD. So if you guys have learned something new, please feel free to subscribe. If you have any feedback, query, or suggestion, please let me know in the comment section. Thank you so much. Thanks for your time.